today and will help to secure the environment upon which all your communities are operating today. The United States Congress is also discussing, as part of this concept, what is called the DREAM Act, one that will probably provide these benefits to all undocumented students that enter this country before they turn 16 years old. And this initiative is co-sponsored incidentally by both senators from Iowa, Senator Grassley and Senator Harkin. The fourth area where both states need to act and where we have far achieved the most impressive results is in the protection of our borders. Both Mexico and the United States signed at the end of the September 11 events of 2001 an agreement with 22 points to ensure security in our borders. And both countries are now fulfilling this program, to the point that even though nothing can be foolproof, the security in the border between Mexico and the United States is very strongly one of the toughest things that you can have. We are now working more and more in enhancing control systems, visa systems, transfer systems, everything at the border so that we can have secure borders. But also we need to have efficient borders. We need to be able to bring together the products and the processes that will allow us to pass goods and services as efficiently as we can in order to avoid the disruption of this almost $2 billion a day traffic between our two economies. And so what we need to do is to work together in that concept, as well as with Canada in the case of the United States. And finally, we know that unless we find adequate programs of economic development, the migration problem will remain there. And this is a key process that we have left behind and we don't talk about. It is important to start thinking as societies that investment from the United States society and economy into Mexico will make a big difference in terms of the migration issue and the security issue. The more that we can integrate our economies, the more that jobs are provided, not only in the United States but also south of the border, the more you will have a society, as a whole society of the two nations, that will be able to consume more. What will happen then is, if you have these jobs being created in Mexico, this important element that I mentioned of what Mexico consumes from the United States will become even larger and more important. And therefore, jobs will be created there, but jobs will be created here also. And people will find out then that it is in the benefit of both economies to continue with that process, because slowly you will be building what we call, and President Bush and President Fox just mentioned, as a partnership for prosperity. This is an essential and key ingredient in the long run. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that for many of you, Mexico may seem like a very far away place compared to where Iowa stands. For me, it could not be any closer. I mean, it is close to my heart because of all the memories of the years that I spent in Iowa State University. It is close to my personal relationship because I have a daughter who was born in this beautiful state. But in addition, it is because the links between your country, your state, your economy, and my country and my economy are there. We are important for Iowa in terms of the production of goods, but we are also important for Iowa because when you look at the results of migration from Mexican Americans into the United States, and in particular in Iowa, you will see the results, the positive results of this migration flow. Look at the way that towns are now going through a revival in Iowa, and look at the reason for that revival in this beautiful state of ours. It is the fact that migrants are coming and they are now creating jobs, are creating consumption, and creating a very different environment. The reason why the state of Iowa can now be, again, important in terms of growing fast, creating jobs, and providing the elements for people to live before. As Mexicans, I am very interested to gain knowledge and enrich myself of what the problems that your communities are facing in this migration problem. As Americans, you will have to do the same. You will have to understand what is it that the benefits from these migrants will be given to your country, to your community, to your society, so that we can work together, all the benefits, put them all into one single roof, and come with a program that will make sense for your society, for your economy, and for our society and our economy. Thank you very much.
agreed to take a few questions. There is a microphone back there, and I invite you to step to the microphone with your question.
Since you were kind enough to come, even with this weather, I'll be happy to entertain questions for 20 minutes if you wish.
First, we're going to see if this microphone.
It works.
Let's see how we could do it if we were giving you an oral exam today. Really, first of all, I would like to suggest to you that the labor supply in the United States is not one where, as you described, where we have inadequate numbers of workers, even though we just had over 7% growth in GNP, the number of jobs created was still negative and has been for some time. The reason your citizens come to our country for work is that even the wages that are the lowest, such as the custodial staffs at Walmart, you may have heard about the problem there, are still higher than your country. NAFTA is a target to many of the Democratic candidates running down. And the reason is that Mexico will not, apparently, I'm asking you if this is true, allow or perhaps encourage labor unions. You do not have a situation where you can raise the wages in Mexico so that people don't need to come to this country. Also, while we export corn, soybeans, and pork, we import automobiles, refrigerators, and other things. And so it's not the level playing field that you might be suggesting we need. I too would say we need a level playing field, and we need to level it with labor unions in your country and raise the wage rates so that, in fact, fewer people need to come to this country. I wonder if you comment on environmental standards and labor and wage rates.
Thank you. Ever since we came to government, we have been very concerned about two things that the previous governments were not concerned about, which in a way is the position that you were mentioning. The first one is we need a stabilization policy that would imply that our inflation rates will be very low, because that will create stability for the exchange rate. One of the things that you mentioned, which is true, is in order for us to export labor in a disguised manner, okay, it will be by having a policy that ultimately leads to a devaluation of our currency, and therefore giving an unfair advantage to Mexican workers against the United States workers. As you know, the policy that we have been implementing for the past 3 years has been a policy where stability, economic stability, has become the trademark. We have brought down inflation now to a level not exactly the same as the United States, pretty close. We're about 4%, maybe 3.8% at the end of this year. And our target is to bring our inflation rate to the same level as the United States inflation rate, so that in that context, the equilibrium, the financial equilibrium, will not be moved away, and you will have a stable currency exchange. That's very important because in many ways it will eliminate the concern that you have. By doing that, our wage levels will be simply translated into the more that we can provide jobs, the more we will increase the salaries in Mexico, and the more that increase will be translated into an equalization with the United States wages in dollar terms, not in peso terms, which will not be the case. The second thing that we have done is that we have guaranteed real wage increases for our workers. Since basically 1980, this is the first time in the past 3 years when real wages in Mexico have increased at a rate of about 5% per year. And I agree with your concern. It was the policy before. Our policy now is that workers deserve to get more and more real wage increases so they can have a stronger consumption pattern, therefore level of life, standard of living that will be better. So these two things we are moving now. Our labor unions are now in many ways accepting these facts. They are working therefore with us in order to have increases in real wages. And you can check the data, it's right there. We have increased these levels more and more, and we will continue to do that because we happen to agree with you that unfair trade is not what we want. What we want is fair trade, competition in that regard, but at the same time we need to do it in a way that will make sense. The other thing that is happening is, whether you believe it or not, you are taking away our best prepared people. I mean, You may say, well, what about you? Fine, but I mean, at the level of people that we're talking, the skills of these people, they are being trained in Mexican schools, and when they come to the United States, the level of the people that are now getting into the United States, and that you can look at the statistics, more and more are better educated than they used to be in the past. Now, they may be ending up in the jobs that we are mentioning, but the level of education that they have is higher. The problem is many of these people have no documents, and therefore they cannot go into the labor market and compete at the correct level given their training and their education. In a way, it's a funny situation, because what it implies is you are getting, I'm sorry for the word, and I don't want to be demeaning to my compatriots, but you are getting cheap labor in that sense, which is unfair competition to your people here, but it's also unfair for them because they are not being paid what they should be paid given the skill level they have, but they cannot do anything differently because they have no documents to protect themselves. And so the second thing that you are creating is this difficulty of your community to really recognize what these people can bring into the community if they were left with the right and proper documentation. This is why we have to work together, because it will make this equalization that you are looking for, and therefore you will have a fair competition between workers in the United States and workers from Mexico in the fields that will correspond.
I've been working in Chiapas. I'm just up here in the city. And President Fox, in his campaign, suggested that it would only take 15 minutes to solve the problem of the Southeast. Can you tell me what's being done? Certainly, NAFTA has, and it is, as you say, a very complex problem. NAFTA in Chiapas is not working well. Farmers are losing their farms. They cannot afford to produce corn anymore because the U.S. is dumping it in the north. Mexico, 10 years ago, exported corn, and now they import 35% of it from the U.S. It is changing the face of southern Mexico. In Chiapas, in Oaxaca, in Guerrero, the answer, one would think, would be development of some sort. I work for an NGO in San Cristobal del Caso. We're finding that though President Fox talks a lot about the need and the necessity for NGOs, we're seeing nothing but roadblocks in things like immigration. I applied for an FM3 visa for permission to work 4 years ago, and I've yet to see it. Under your law, working on a tourist visa is illegal. In Chiapas, in Oaxaca, that law is enforced. And yet, Jimmy Carter is coming with Habitat for Humanity to Veracruz, and there'll be 1,500 volunteers who are coming on tourist visas to work at the bill. How long will these states, the Chiapas, Oaxaca, Guerrero, the places that need the development the most, how long will they be ignored? What is the government doing? Certainly in loosening up things like what you were just talking about, immigration, and the borders. The southern border is also a border of Mexico, and yet we find a growing militarization in Mexico. All workers coming into Mexico from Guatemala. Would you like to comment?
Oh yeah, because I have a sister who works in that area. First, let me tell you that I'm very happy to meet an American undocumented worker. There are not too many. There are not too many, but I feel better now. In the true sense that what you see and the way that you felt is what people feel on this side, okay? The contribution, the positive contribution that you can provide simply cannot happen because of this undocumented worker situation that you were facing. And just as you mentioned those things, this is exactly the way that people feel when they are on this side of the border. That all these positive contributions that they can provide are being in many ways stopped because of this undocumented status that they have. let me give you a couple of answers and recognizing the problems that we have in terms of what we were able to do. The first thing that is very important to us is to start recognizing that we need in Mexico what I call now, and it was thanks to the governor of Chiapas that I coined this word, not only a North American view of migration, but also a southern border view of migration. Meaning by that, you're right, we were so concerned and concentrated on the relationship between Mexico and the United States in migration that we're not looking at the issues of migration that came our way from Central America and now even South America. And so many of the things that we complain about in treatment to our nationals in the United States, we were in fact repeating ourselves in the southern part of the Mexican border. So what we are doing right now is looking at that. As you know, we just signed the International Immigration Convention, which implies that there are certain rights guaranteed now by this convention that we have to respect for migrants coming into Mexico. That's the first thing that we did, and now we are trying to implement that. What you call demilitarization is a concern that we have, which is the concern about narco-traffic and a lot of illegal weapons being brought from the southern part of Central America through Mexico and going into Mexico. And you're right in the sense that what we needed to do was to create a stronger control in our southern border to do two things. One of them is complement the security measures that we require in Mexico to avoid any kind of terrorist attack in Mexico, but also fight narco-traffic in terms of what is coming from the southern parts into Mexico. So we don't see it, even though I may recognize that you see more army people. We don't see that as a militarization of the border. What we see is a needed act right now while we are building the federal police that you're aware of, slowly, a police that is non-corrupt, that young people with higher degrees, so that better paid, so that we can build it slowly. We're building at the rate of about 3,000 per year. This is a special police force that will be taking the role that is now being played by the army. And so slowly substituting the army people by this police in the fight against narco-traffic and against terrorism in all our borders and our cities. But it will take some time. Since you lived in Mexico, you know the levels of corruption that we found when we walk into government and the problems that we are facing in that context. So we're building this police and trying to substitute one for the other. In the meantime, yes, we needed to strengthen the points of entry against these two major concerns that we have. What President Fox has tried to do, and maybe because you were in Chiapas, you may say that we are failing, is try to provide the stronger social programs in the area. Now, even you have to recognize, and what I mean by even you is you are living there, that when we walked in, many of the promises that were made to the Zapatista army were fulfilled. In particular, the movement away from the areas, when they demanded so, of the army posts that we had. Those were, each and every one of them, were promises that were satisfied in terms of the fixing or reaching an agreement with the Zapatista people. So when President Fox mentioned during his campaign that he could do it in 15 minutes, what he meant is, I'm willing to walk and do these things. And whatever it takes, I will do my part. Do you do your part? The problem that we're facing right now is that we have done our part. We retired the army. We have allowed them now to have this local government according to the customs that you have in the area. But we still don't see a reaction on their side, meaning by that the Zapatista people walking and saying, okay, we want to integrate to society the right way. They went, as you know, and they decided right now to move into this self-governance type of organization. And we did not do anything against it. On the contrary, we are working with the governor of Chiapas in building the necessary legal modifications that will allow this kind of governments to be recognized as legal and working and operating within the system of our country, because what we believe is customs from these ethnic groups will have to be recognized and accepted. So we are doing that, slowly pushing in that direction. It's taking more than 15 minutes, yes, but we are trying to move in that direction. In terms of the last question, come see me and we'll talk about whether you're going to get your FM3. I have no idea. This is the bureaucracy, and I may be more frustrated than you are. But I would be happy to take your name. I think you should. Just take advantage of it.
You mentioned the free flow of labor. European Union
Let me answer as an economist, and they will answer as a politician. Okay? As an economist, I think that it makes a lot of sense. What you see in NAFTA is a result of free flow of goods, merchandise. You need now to match it with a free flow of labor. It simply makes sense. You have a free flow of capital, you have a free flow of goods, you have a free flow of many things, technology, all these things. But the one thing you don't have is a free flow of labor. This is a major problem all over the world, not only between Mexico and the United States and Canada, but also it is a major issue that we have to settle. If you want to have what the economists call a balanced market approach in terms of the overall context, then you cannot have one market in equilibrium and all the other markets in disequilibrium, or vice versa. Have many markets in equilibrium and one market in disequilibrium. You have to reach a general equilibrium concept. The fact that we don't have this free flow of labor is creating this problem. And the problem has things like the gentleman mentioned, okay? The unfair competition that you'll be facing in terms of your workers here, but also the possibility of matching supply and demand of labor doesn't exist because you don't allow that to happen. So it happens in a very strange way, which is a way that is not market-oriented. You are destroying the possibility of a free market-oriented solution. So as an economist, I will say to you that the more you look at this in perspective, the more you will be convinced that it is the right solution in the long run. Having said that, as a politician, I've been saying in Mexico that neither the United States society nor the Mexican society is still ready for that. And it's a two-way street. It cannot be only the United States, it has to also be in Mexico. What it means is we still are some years away from the creation of the cultural and social relationship that will allow this to happen. And what we may want to do, and this is what we are proposing, is to accelerate the process by showing the benefits, but also by working in specific actions that will help in demonstrating that socially, culturally, economically, we are matching societies. It is amazing to me, and I don't want to speak this the wrong way, that two societies that have such a common sharing of values, like the Mexican society and the American society, family values, cultural values, educational values, even the market concept of how things should be working. And in addition, religiously speaking, we are closer than many other societies because we all come from a common ground in terms of what we live, have not been able to reach an agreement. It is amazing, but it's happening. So I think what it means is that we are still in the process of learning from each other and slowly moving together into this final concept. As we do that, you will see the border disappear again. And I always tell people, look, think about the border not as the physical border. Think about the border in terms of where a Mexican-American community lives. Monterrey in Mexico. Okay? You go to Monterrey in Mexico, and by God, it looks a lot like an American city in Texas. You will see church, and you will see Kentucky Fried Chicken, and you will see McDonald's, and you will see many of these things. But not only that, you will see people living and working in the same kind of environment. Pretty similar. To the point that one of the tricks that these traffickers of people do, and this is a true anecdote, it's true. What they do is they bring people from the southern part of Mexico, from the communities that we're talking about, Chiapas, and they drop them off in downtown Monterrey at 6 o'clock in the morning and tell them, okay, you are in the United States, and they walk out. And many people believe it. Because you have to understand they're coming from a rural community in southern Mexico. So when they walk into this place, this is the description that were given to them of the kind of cities that you have in the United States and cities where you were supposed to be brought into. So when they are left in these downtown areas of Monterrey, they simply accept the fact that it is an American city, until, of course, they keep walking around here. Mind you, not because of the Spanish, because many people will be speaking Spanish in San Antonio and many of these Texan towns. So it's not the Spanish, it's finally when you start asking and people say to you, wow, boy, are you done? You are in Mexico. That you realize that you were taken for a ride and left in the wrong place. So we are closing in this political relationship. Okay? How long it will take? I mean, if I were able to do it, 3 days, 50 minutes, as you said. But we have to convince each other that it makes sense. And it's a long process. It takes time, it takes working together, it takes you witnessing people living in your community and doing integration. That's why we don't use the term illegal. Because people who come from Mexico into the United States are law-abiding citizens. They have family values, and they're pretty much outside doing any kind of criminal actions. So what you will see is a pattern. If you look at the statistics, the pattern of criminality and big crime in these communities is lower than in many other communities in the United States society.
Good evening.
He doesn't want me to talk anymore. I will be happy to answer. How many people are there on the line? Okay, we're happy to answer to the end of that line. Is that okay with you?
My name is John Paul.
People are a little bit upset on my
I am the newly appointed administrator of the Iowa Division of Latino Affairs, appointed by the governor and confirmed by the legislative body. And I wanted to first of all agree, concur with you, and also reinforce some of the things that you're saying. For example, that Latinos in Iowa are active contributing members of this community, of the community at Iowa. For example, while the communities in Iowa, small community and rural community Iowa, are seeing their downtowns disappear, in communities where you see a rapid growth of Latinos, those downtowns are becoming stronger, where they're usually pioneered by things like small Mexican food restaurant, and then a small grocery store, and then there's two, and then there's a record store, and so on. I see that in Storm Lake, Roseville, West Liberty, Columbus Junction, and so forth. So Latinos and especially Mexicans in that community are a strong, valuable part of Iowa. That said, my question is, after September 11th, we saw the strengthening or the trying to make immigration, especially Mexican immigration to the United States, a terrorist act. Within that context, there was a series of very punitive measures passed against immigrants who are coming undocumented to this country. Things like taking away 245I, or English only in the state of Iowa, or the stripping of labor rights of workers, which a lot of times is creating and continues to create a permanent underclass within the United States society, especially in the area of labor. My question really revolves around, do you think that by creating an underclass which has no rights, are we affecting the labor rights of all workers? And if we're affecting the rights of all workers, civil, human, and labor rights of all workers, by creating that underclass, which can then be exploited by unscrupulous individuals and companies, would it not seem that a policy that advocates for the labor rights of all workers would be in the best interest of not only Iowa, the United States, but also Mexico?
The answer is yes. The answer to your second question is, you guys are the ones who will have to write this legislation that will imply for everybody whether it makes sense. And the only way you can do that is by showing people that this underclass is going to be there and it's affecting your rights as a worker. As I mentioned a little while ago, they will come and be competing in a very unfair way with the rest of the people.
At the reception, we can take the rest of the
let me
questions.
propose what Professor saying, that at the reception we can take the rest of the questions.
Could you just take it?
Could I call upon Ambassador Manat, Tom Phelps? We have a little token of our gratitude to you, Dr. Derbez, and the Ambassador and Mr. Phelps will present it.
Well, I think so much has been said so well this evening. The Chairman has already said this better. On behalf of Tom and myself, and I think all of us, we want to salute the Doctor, the Secretary, His Excellency, not only for a wonderful discussion of, obviously, NAFTA and migration from a standpoint that many of us have never thought about it, frankly, but also of probably equal or bigger importance in the relationship, in the maturing relationship of the United States of America and Mexico, is a great new democracy of the country of New Mexico. Congratulations.
Let me just read what it says. It says, in appreciation for the 2003 Maynard Phelps Lecture in Political Science, Iowa State University, we are hereby obliged to provide a $100,000 check to His Excellency Dr.
Thank you very much for your attendance this evening. There is a reception in the back that follows. I hope you all can join us. There have been many people that have been very, very helpful in putting together not only the people on this stage, but some staff people that I'd like to thank, Dave Giesky, Pat Miller, and George Slade from the Political Science Department, who did such a wonderful job of dealing with the details of this lecture. Thank you and good evening, and please join us.